Good evening, race fans, and welcome to weekend number 9 of the Herd Summer Racing League. This weekend we head to France for the Petit Boucle course, which will be 62 kilometres in length. Tonight we'll be looking out for the climbing primes. So we've got the Aqueduct.com at 13.4k, the Aqueduct Forwards at 34. Then we've got the Petitcom at 55.3 with the finish at 62, and we'll also see a little bit of the Mont Ventoux climb as well. Going to head over to Ian McClaverty, who tonight is following our featured D rider.
We're following Neil tonight. It's going to be a busy race. It's going to be a long race, so hopefully everybody is well prepared. I can imagine it won't go off quite as quick as normal, but hopefully people will pace themselves and will manage to get themselves up that last KOM. We've got around about a minute left to go before the D's start. We've got about 34 riders signed up to the race. Just over 20 people on Zwift Power, so we'll keep a track on that. Hopefully Neil, who has recently dropped from C to D, so he should do quite well today. And then there's a few other familiar faces as well for this race that hopefully we'll be able to pick out as we go along. Got 20 seconds now to the start. And we're off. As predicted, a fairly steady start to the race, which is good to see. Hopefully that means there'll be some good racing at the end. Some late people starting. And Neil on his bright yellow Tron up at the front. Formed a nice group of about 10, 12 riders with a further 20 still riders behind him. Just heading off nicely round to the marina and then out into the French countryside, which I'm sure we will be talking about lots over the next few hours. Over to you, Gordon.
Yep, tonight I think we're having one or two problems with the pictures there. We'll just see if we can get them back or not. But so next off will be in the C category, which we hopefully will be following our own James Bailey here. So we'll see how he gets off in a moment. We're just trying to confirm who we might be following in the Bs. It'll be one of I think it's David or his brother Chandler. So they'll be going off in about 10 minutes' time. See how they get on. But at the moment, yeah, just sitting in the pen, waiting for the C's to go. We've got quite a big field in both categories by the look of it. Just looking at Zwift Power, there's a lot of C riders.
Too many.
Too many, apparently, for James. So we'll see how they start off. I'm expecting, pushing on 2 hours. Certainly for Cat D's, will be around the 2 hour mark. Maybe the C's and the B's will be a bit quicker, but with 3 comms in there as well. And unfortunately, no sprints tonight, so just going for the comms. Hopefully everyone's recognised that where the primes come in this course, and if they go for every sprint, they will tire themselves out. But it'll be an interesting start. I don't think they'll go too crazy at the start, but obviously the GC points do still count for quite a bit in this sort of race, so they will have to go for it as well. But we'll have to wait and see. How are these kicked off, Ian? Are they bunching up, or are they spreading out? How sort of pace of start does it look like they're doing?
Started off at a steady pace, nothing too quick. There's a nice group at the front of around about 10 people. Nobody flying off the front, which is good to see. And then there's a second group. I think actually there's one person off at the front, but I think he may be a B rider. And then there's a second group behind of a similar number, so it's definitely splitting into two definitive groups. Neil's sat nicely in third or fourth position with a few other familiar people that we are aware of. But yeah, it's a steady start. I think they're only at 1.5k. I think the first Aqueduct KOM kicks in round about 13k, so we'll have some winding roads for the guys just to try and tire themselves out, and then see what happens at the Aqueduct. I think is going to be the first major incidents.
Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, I think a lot of these riders possibly done this course during the week on the team time trial, which it starts off on a similar sort of route. So got quite a flat sort of 12 or 13k before we hit that Aqueduct. And the Aqueduct itself, it's classed as the reverse KOM, which I believe is counting towards the primes tonight, but we're not 100% on that, but hopefully it does. But it is short. The actual timed KOM section is only 400 meters, so those classed as a KOM, it's a bit more of a sprint, really. It won't take long to cover that 400 meters, and certainly worth going for. And I also suspect it might sort of split out any groups that are there as well. Plus, also the latter part of this course where it rolls up and down quite a bit. It will be very, very easy to get to split up from the group. So we'll just have to wait and see. I don't know. How are we going, James? Are you just about ready to leave the pen?
Yeah, I've got 30 seconds to go. Just ramping up towards sort of race pace in the pen. Hoping for a relatively stable start like the D's, because I don't want to be holding 350 watts for too long. And if I know Ben Poynton, he's going to go. I mean, his sort of like race pace is around 300 anyway, so he's probably going to be pushing quite hard. We've got just under 10 seconds to go now. This is a terrible idea. What was I thinking? But we're off now.
Right,
I'm in the lead.
See James on the screen and see how we're getting on. I think we've lost the D ride at the moment. Hopefully get that one back, but as that looks like James is just leaving the pen at the moment. I can just try and make out what exactly power he's doing at the moment. See what sort of start he's getting on, and we'll cut back to James in a minute or two once he's probably caught his breath after that start, and see how the front of the C group's getting on. But flicking back, I suppose, to Zwift power at the moment, we can see now. I don't know how the D's category looking. We've got quite a few C's in the D category. I don't know if Ian, can you see any sight of them? Is there any chance of some of the C's or possibly even riders that aren't on the Zwift power pulling away in that front group? Or is it
the front group's is behaving very well and sticking well together. I think, as you say, in the front group there is it's probably half of them are D's and half of them there's one B and a few C's. So maybe as it stretches out over the distance, potentially there could be a smaller group that forms, but I think it will just depend on whether some of these stronger D riders as well can just latch onto those. It's something that they do on a Thursday night in the time team trials, so that it's used to holding on. I've just noticed a few more names in this front group. We've got John Richardson, who's I think a regular in this race, and also Freddie Fernandez, who I rode with a couple of weeks ago in one of the new TTT teams, and he's managed to find himself in this front group, which is really good. And William as well, who rode with the Rhinos last week for the first time and really performed very well. So there's some big names in this group. So hopefully it will the fireworks will start soon.
Yeah, I think it will. I mean, as suggested at the start, it's very flat, so I can see even if there is maybe one or two riders in the higher category, they'll even find it hard to pull away. So I suspect till we get round to hit that first Aqueduct reverse KOM, we'll see big groups sticking together, and it won't be till that point. But then I can see a bit of mayhem after that. It's a good chance if riders do want to break away, they can just power on and keep going after the KOM and follow through. But yeah, not too bad. I don't know if we can cut back to James. How did the start go?
Yeah, it's been relatively sensible. This front group is absolutely enormous. It's probably about 75-80% of the field. It's very sensible. I mean, I'm towards the front of the group. It's a bit of a rookie error, but I'm holding about, I guess, 2.8 at the moment and holding fairly comfortably. So I'm just trying to slink back a little bit towards the middle, get a little bit more draft, and try and reduce the power a bit and just save anything I possibly can. But looks like most of the field's doing 2.7 plus. So started off okay so far, 2k in. Climbed a grand total of 0 meters in the first 2,000. But yeah, looking okay so far. But there's much worse to come, and 60 kilometers to go.
As you suggest, there's definitely a lot worse to come. The start of this is probably the calm before the storm, as we should say. Looking at the C riders on Zwift Power, there's 1 or 2 B riders in there. So possibly whether they'll interfere with the ride later on, although they don't look the strongest of B riders. So hopefully we'll get a nice group with the Bs, and then they manage to race between themselves till later down the road, I suppose, when the passing A's and Bs will pass. So in a longer race like this, they might have more of an impact on the overall GC competition. But we shall see. We've got about another minute before the Bs go off. So I don't know if I want to cut back to Ian briefly just to see how the Ds are going. Is it just rolling along nicely, grouped up?
Yeah, rolling along nicely. We've got one or two people. I don't know whether it's by accident or on purpose, but they're shooting off the front. But then quickly the group just swallows them up again. So we've had 2 or 3 people. We've had actually Neil went out to the front as well. And I think before he knew it, he was caught up by the group again. So other than the occasional flyer for only temporary, it's just one big group rolling on.
Yeah, very good. So, and we're just about to go off in the B group, which is looking like some good numbers, possibly even more riders than there in the C group. So expecting a very fast B group to hit here, but we do have 10 seconds, 7 seconds down. So we're just about to go off in the moment. We normally find the Bs are a bit more competitive sometimes and start a bit harder, have a go at each other a bit more and try and drop other riders. But so we're seeing 1 or 2 riders leaving out the pen. I can even see a sprints, a few red sort of numbers there. But at the moment, we are following Justin Chandler, which he's doing about 4 or 5 out the pen, which is kind of normal for this B group. I suspect give it a kilometre or 2, it'll be very similar to C's, a large group. I don't see anyone getting away from the front of this on the flat section. I think we'll just be sitting in, waiting for the aqueduct to come around and then have some mayhem. But it looks like we've started off with 54 riders, or 54 including on the pen. I can see someone there on a TT bike, whether that's the case or not, I'm not sure. But got a large group here. See pretty much the whole field as far as I can tell. Just trying to pan out and see where the back of this group actually goes, but we're only a couple 100 meters in, but they're stringing out a wee bit, but I suspect we'll have a very large group, pretty much like the Ds and the Cs that we're getting at the moment. But it will be interesting to see what sort of pace they do and when they're going to catch up the Cs. That certainly made the difference last week. I think which route we were doing Magnificent 8 last week, and the groups kind of caught each other, being a short course very near the end. Whereas today, I don't know where it'll be, probably around somewhere between the 40-50 minute mark possibly, but the D's taking up to 2 hours. If they can jump on a wheel of any riders, it will certainly speed up their race and potentially pull away and make any gaps. But B group started absolutely fine, exactly the same as the C's and the D's. They've got a massive group here. I don't know, there must be. Just trying to view back through the group, but there's a couple that have been dropped off the back, but there's probably about 40 odds. I can find the back of this group. Yeah, just short of 40 riders in this B group, so very large group. I can even see 1 or 2 power-ups getting thrown down already, just to draft power up. Whether that's 1 or 2 riders not quite used to the starting pace of Zwift races, but we shall see. But yeah, Ian, how are the Ds getting on?
They do seem to be increasing the lead over the group behind them. It was around about 5 to 10 seconds. It's just crept up to around, I just can't quite see that number, around about, it's probably about 30 seconds, and then there's a further group behind them at 50 seconds. So this front group is definitely working well. They're sat around about between 2.2 to 2.5. So for the DCAT, that's a good pace. But I think they need to make the most of this flat part of the course, because I think as soon as they hit the aqueduct, after that becomes quite hilly, and I think that's where it will become more racy, and people might drop off, people might shoot out in front. So I think it's trying to get through this, and they're obviously trying to shake off as many people as possible. But it's quite hard to do that on the flat. And the first 13 kilometers is of this track is definitely flat. It's definitely flat.
I think so. I think possibly the D groups maybe suffering with a bit more 1 or 2 over category riders in it. I can see 1 or 2 Cs and even a B rider possibly pushing up the pace, which is not ideal, although it makes the Ds go off fast and have a good time. But if they push the pace too high, they will sort of tire out the rest of the Ds quicker than would be normal. But as you say, I suspect they'll hit the aqueducts and possibly find the stronger riders, the Cs and the Bs that might be riding in the D group, just pull away after that, and we'll find the proper, genuine D racers all group together and see how they get on.
I think because the race is just that much longer than a normal race than I've seen for a long time, I think we will see people for that last half hour, and that last KOM, I think really struggle. And I think the race will start to pick up, and I think we'll see people, accelerate, and we'll see people fall off as well. So hopefully it will be an exciting race. But I think the length of it, people have to pace themselves. Or else they're going to really, really struggle for that final third of the race, really.
Definitely.
And as we said, it gets bumpy for that final third.
Yeah, I mean, we do the sort of the whole of France, both directions, forwards and backwards, or forwards and reverse. So we go over both the aqueduct KOM both ways, and actually both ways over the Petit KOM, but I believe only the forward direction counts, which comes near the end of the race. Let me get the exact distance, but comes at 55 kilometers in the 62 kilometer race. So, I mean, by the time you hit the top of that KOM, you're talking only 3 or 4 kilometers to the end. So it will be a bit of a mixture of people going for the KOM and just people going for a GC position by that point. So could be an interesting run down to the finish. But certainly with 2 climbs and the aqueduct and some rollers, there's plenty of opportunity to get dropped by the groups if you're not paying attention. Certainly with a mixture with where our group's passing you as well. You'll have to play it right and watch the gaps and make sure you don't get dropped, because it's a lonely ride if you fall off the back of the main group and have to start riding this alone. But not doing too bad. So back into Justin and the Bs, exactly as they were. Still this huge group in here. As I said, he's shown as 35th at the moment, which I think 35th all the way up to first is probably about a 5-meter gap between them. They're just a big, huge group. I mean, they've pulled out a nearly 40-second gap over the, as we call it, the chasing group, I suppose now. But that just shows you that what happens when you drop off the back of a group 40 seconds back in 4 kilometers. So that gap's just going to grow and grow. So very important you stay in the group. But Justin's doing absolutely fine. I can see it looks like his brother's also in the group, David Chandler. I believe they're riding together next to each other. So I'm sure they'll be encouraging each other, whether they've got any plans of attack or whether they will just ride together and hit the primes and see how they get on. But I don't know, James, can we have a chat? How are you getting on?
Yeah, not too bad. Still an enormous group. Pretty much every time we go up any sort of slight incline, I start to get spat towards the back and really have to push to get back in. But it's looking okay so far. I suspect I'll hold in here until the aqueduct, and then I'll probably lose a lot of places very quickly.
Yep. Do you have any particular tactics, or are you just going to hold in the group and then see how you get on for the primes?
Hold until I can, to be honest. Then have a bit of a push up the KOM and definitely lose the front of a group then. But hopefully there'll be some nice group efforts to hang on to as well. And if we work together, then hopefully we can get around at decent speed and then attack the climb at the end. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, as you say, sit in the group at the moment, see how the KOMs come, and with the KOMs and the rollers and everything else, I think this group, or all groups that we're seeing at the moment that are bunched together, will just blow apart, and then we'll find probably a mixture of categories riding together as the faster groups from behind catch up slowly, and some other riders manage to jump on the wheels. But 5.5 kilometers in now for the Bs. I'm not quite sure. Do we have, what distance are the Ds at, Ian? Are they getting anywhere near the aqueduct com yet?
Kilometers, just approaching 11 kilometers, and the group at the front have eked out a gap of about just under a minute. So the front group, as we said before, are working hard to, I think, try and lose as many people as they can. But I think they'll all know exactly where the aqueduct is. So there may be a little bit of soft pedaling just to relieve some of that lactic acid in the legs to give them something to go at and maybe attack the aqueduct climb, which will be interesting to see. So that should be, I would say, in another couple of minutes. We should start approaching that. We've not made I think we go through the village first and then come out the other side, and then we head our way up to the aqueduct. So as you said before, it's not a steep climb, but it's a climb. It's a KOM. It's a measured KOM. So I think we'll see some action and we'll see some people pulling away and some people dropping off.
Yeah, I believe so. So I think, as you say, we go through the little village first. There is technically a sprint banner in this village, so hopefully people have done their homework and don't go for the sprint. But we shall see in a moment, I suppose. Does it look like anyone's attempting a sprint here?
One or two. Maybe they've not read the pre-race notes. Nothing too serious though. I think they've realised because nobody else has followed them. There's just two of them at the front. They'll soon get swallowed up again.
Always so the danger.
Just coming out of the other side. Just coming out of the other side of the village now. So the road winds its way up to the aqueduct, and I think within a minute or so we should be at the bottom of that KOM. I don't think the people at the front. It has definitely stretched out this group a little bit already. Neil finds himself at the back of this group, but I think he knows what he's doing. He can see everybody in front of him. There's no major gaps. There's nobody really flown off the front yet. So I think he just needs to sit where he's sat and try and get to the top of this KOM as quickly as possible. He's got plenty of people in front of him to use as targets. That's generally how I get up KOMs. Is look at the people in front of me and try and get in front of the person who's in front of you. So Neil's got plenty of people in front of him. He's got John Richardson next to him, who looks as if he's doing the exact same. And the two of them, I'm sure, will work their way through the field as they work up the KOM.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's probably a good way to treat KOMs. I know myself. You start near the back of the group. If you eye up the KOM and eye up just passing everyone, you don't need to worry about times. You just got to see the rider in front and try and beat them, and then that's what you're aiming for. But yeah, I mean, certainly one or two look like we went for that sprint in the Cat D, so it'll be interesting what the C's and the B's do behind them, because certainly it's strung out those D's a wee bit, but whether they're just saying they've got a plan to start attacking towards the bottom of the aqueduct as well.
They're all back as a group now. So
it does slightly ramp before the official KOM on the aqueduct, so
yeah, it's just started now. It's just gone up to 4 or 5%. So
yeah. And does it look like anyone's going at the moment? I think the official the KOM marker comes round in a couple of corners time, so maybe half a kilometre or two.
Yeah, the watts per kilogram's just stepped up slightly, but hopefully again they know where the line that they cross, and that's the point where they really put the hammer down, and we'll start seeing some quicker racing. A few people actually, 1 or 2 people have just dropped off the back already. So hopefully that wasn't the sprinters, and it's taken it out of them already. We've just gone over the line now, and you can see already that a few people really putting in. Neil's gone up to 4, 5, 4.5. There's a few other people sat at similar 5. Williams sat at 6.5. Neil's working his way through the field now, so he just needs to, I think, maintain this pace. If he can just pick it up a little bit, then I'm sure he'll do quite well on the KOM. He seems to have worked his way from the back of the group, as we said before. There's a few power-ups being thrown down. We're just coming up to the line now. I think the line is halfway across the bridge.
It is, yeah. It does flatten out just before it.
Yeah, so William's gone over first at 37, and others are just going across now. Neil's come in second. William seemed to have really done well on that with 37.5. Neil's 46 seconds, and John's got third as well, so that's really, really good. if we keep those three racing, it should be a close race. I'm sure they're all aware of their positions as well for the first KOM. So
Certainly
and
sound
they're
like they'll
heading
went for
down the other
KOM.
side. And it
Yeah,
has,
well,
and it
we'll,
has, as much as it is a small KOM and it isn't a steep KOM, it's obliterated this group. So we'll see what happens over the next 5 to 10 minutes to see if there are any advanced groups that form. Neil's found himself pretty much in the middle of it all in a group of about 6 or 8 people. So hopefully he's in a good position again, sat at the back of that pack. Hopefully managing to pick up some of that draft. And we'll see what happens in the next 4 or 5 minutes to see if more groups form.
very good. Good stuff. We'll see how they get on there. I don't know if we're able to cut back to James there. He's looks like the C group has just gone through the sprint section. Was there any noticeable increase in pace?
A few people went off the front and the group split a little bit. But we've come back together again afterwards, and the pace has definitely gone up a little notch. Whereas I was happily sort of holding like 2.4, 2.5. I'm now up close to 3. It's starting to hurt a bit, and just before the climb as well, which is like literally just around the corner.
Yep. Good luck with that. We'll watch you get over the KOM and cut back to you in a moment, maybe see how you get on. But just looking at C group myself here, they've probably got just a corner or two before they hit the KOM, which I think is going to probably play out pretty much like the D group, where bunch does split up and whether a few of them can form a group when they come over the back of the KOM. But it looks like James at the moment, he's just hanging on the back of that group. So hopefully he can kick on up that KOM and stay with some riders, and because that front group won't be hanging around if any opportunity. I'm sure they will be dropping riders if possible. But we'll cut back to James in a minute. Looking back at the Bs, and Justin, we're exactly as we were. 10.9 kilometers, nearly 11 kilometers. We still got this massive group. Must be 30 odd riders still, 34, 35 riders. A minute and 15 back to the next group. So you can just see that gap getting pushed further and further out the way. But Justin's looking absolutely spot on. They're not doing too bad. I mean, this group's probably running somewhere between 3 to 3.5 in the draft. Maybe up to 4 if you're sitting on the front. But from what I've seen so far, Justin's sitting mid-pack, doing absolutely everything he needs to at the moment, just sitting in like the other groups, waiting for the KOMs, just to see what's going to happen. But it's got a large group. This is probably larger than either the D or the C group. And I suspect they'll probably hit this KOM pretty hard and break up like the rest of them. But not doing too bad at all. But we'll cut back to them in the moment when we pass the sprint and before we hit the KOM. But I don't know, Ian, how are the D group? Have they come back together, or is it still riding in smaller groups spread apart?
It's now, it was one big group before the KOM, and it's now 3. I'm not sure whether the person, the group at the front might just be one single person actually. But Neil's found himself a group of about 8 people. So that was 2 groups. Neil was driving, and he really was driving the group forward to try and catch the group in front that's formed 2 smaller groups into one big group. And they've probably dropped maybe 3 or 4 riders off the back. But Neil's positioned himself well in a group. There's one person. It says just one person up front, but it looks like they may be the B rider, the B cat rider. So they can afford to, for the race purpose, they can afford to let him go.
I believe if it's him.
Yeah.
But yeah, okay, sounding very good. So the Bs have just gone through the sprint section. I did see 1 or 2 bump up the numbers, so it looks like we'll have similar sort of output as the Ds and the Cs. Just as 1 or 2 of them sprint, it starts to stretch out the whole pack. Justin at the moment, he's kind of hanging on the back of the group at the moment, so just need to make sure he stays attached with this group as we head up to the KOM and Aqueduct, and then see what sort of time he can get. But it's definitely picked up the pace. I mean, he's sitting near the back of the group now, doing high 3s, clicking over to 4 watts a kilo. So, although the KOM climb might suit him, actually being probably a slightly lighter rider. So we see how he gets on. If he's learned anything or heard anything about the Ds and the Cs that have gone on the KOM so far, it's worth pushing on and try and get over that in first place. But I don't know, James, are you still there? How's your group? How did the KOM climb go?
Yeah, not great. I managed to hold, I think 400 for certainly the first half and then high freeze, and then we turned around the corner and everyone had already gone way off in front of me. They ramped up the pace quite a bit before the start of the climb, so groups miles in front now. I've got another couple guys with me who dropped off the back as well. There's another guy just in front who will probably catch fairly shortly, so be back to a group of 4, but there's probably 30 plus in that group in front, so I think they're going to stay pretty much like that until we hit the bottom of 1-2. That's going to blow everything apart, but for now, my group of 3 and a guy about 20 yards up the road, I think.
Excellent. It looks like possibly about 12 or 13 of them are ahead of you, might be on Zwift Power 3. But cutting back to Justin the Bees, we're just hitting the KOM section at the moment, so I can see quite a few power ups getting thrown down. He's managed to grab himself a feather power up, so he's working his way through the field pretty well at the moment, pushing 6.5 watts per kilo. So he is catching up, although there's a lot of strong riders at the front as well, a couple of seconds apart. So just push on a wee bit, try and get with this front group. I could see red numbers going in here. Justin's numbers are dropping down a wee bit, so he's not going to be first over this KOM, but he's certainly been pushing it. So we'll just give it a second, see where he comes over the line, and I make it 15th place, which is pretty good. Possibly once you discount 1 or 2 riders in here that won't be on Zwift Power and whatnot, but he's just passed over the KOM. He's flown up a wee bit, so I suspect what we might see is similar to the Ds and the Cs, that the groups just get split apart here. It's very snaked out at the moment. It'll probably take a kilometre or 2 to see exactly how it's going to end up, because they are just riders in 1s and 2s at the moment. Still holding 15th place over that KOM, so it looks like nobody behind is going any faster. But it's probably important now what sort of group you can get, because if you lose the group in front, that's probably going to be where you're going to limit your GC points. It will only be riders catching from behind, unless, of course, you can get a wheel from any of the passing groups that are faster. But yeah, he's coming over the top at the moment, but he has dropped down to 23rd place, so I don't think he's quite going to get back onto that front group. He's got a couple of riders with him and another little group 6 or 7 seconds back, so I think he'll probably drift back to that group and they'll form another little mini peloton at the moment. And unless the A riders come through and give him some help, that's probably where he's going to end up on GC. That I don't see them catching with that group ahead. But Ian, how's the front doing? How's Neil? Has he managed to find a few friends to ride with?
Yep, definitely. The initial group of around about 12 or 13 riders has been reduced to around about 10. There are a few people up front, but none of those appear to be on Zwift Power. So I think the group that we're watching is the race on Zwift Power. Neil seems to be sat in the middle of the pack nicely. They're sat round about 2.2, 2.3, 2.4, 2.5 at the front, so they're doing well. And I think they've just gone through another sprint as well, which obviously isn't going to count. And luckily this time nobody went for it, so hopefully the message has got into the group that the sprints don't count. So nobody went for the sprint this time, so that was a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, looking at Zwift Power, as you suggest there, the front group that's gone away, I don't see any sign of them, so certainly can be ignored. Looks like Neil and John are all there, and William, I believe,
Yep.
holding about 2.3. William's actually down at 2.1, so he's maybe been or actually, I don't know if William's maybe dropped off the back of that group,
Williams just dropped
possibly.
off the back, actually, yeah.
Yeah, so he was doing 2.1. I was about to say he might be drafting a bit better than the other two, but if he gets dropped from that front group, I don't know.
No, I think he is. He's there. He's in this group. He is in this group.
Excellent. So, I mean, his power's a bit lower, 2.1. So maybe he has been hiding a bit more in the draft than the other two. Could be a bit playing it a bit canny. So
I would say Neil has been driving this group to try and reform it. So that's why his might be showing slightly higher.
Excellent. So if we cut back to Justin at the moment, I'm just trying to see what's going on. I've not been focusing on it, but it looks like that passing group that was 6 or 7 seconds behind him have actually come right through, and he's been dropped by them. So he's a bit of no man's land at the moment. He's got one rider, Hoyer, just in front, but he's sort of struggling to stay on the wheel. I think he's going to stay on his wheel. It'll be the two of them. Looking back the way, there's a few B riders spread out. I bet they are about 30 seconds, 40 seconds, 50. Looks like the B riders are the sort of stragglers over the back end of the Aqueduct KOM, and anyone that's been dropped from that front group is just riding a wee bit alone at the moment. But Justin can push up. There's a couple of riders ahead, although I believe they're probably C riders, so they might not be going at the best pace for a B rider to draft them. But if they can form up a group and keep it a decent pace, certainly I suspect, looking at the riders ahead, if they're B riders, they will slowly start to drop. We do still have the main KOM, I suppose we call it on this, the petty KOM reverse we do forward, which doesn't actually count as a prime, but with for a B rider, we're probably looking at a 6-minute climb, I'd say, maybe sub 6 minutes, possibly even 5 minutes for the fastest. So again, it's just another opportunity or chance for the group to split up and reform. So if Justin can stay with this group, just keep going along nicely, he might manage to catch up with 1 or 2 more Bs. He looked like he was quite strong on the climb, so we see how he gets on with a longer climb and then see if it brings it back together. No sign of the A group. Looking at Zwift Power earlier, there was quite a large A group. I can see they have just come over the KOM, and they do actually look slightly better than the previous group. There's probably about a dozen A riders just hit over the Aqueduct KOM, and they are held together pretty well. So you might find that the A riders are working a bit more as a team and start to come through a lot quicker. But yeah, not doing too bad. James, how's your group getting on?
Yeah, these two guys don't want to help at all. So it's slowed down a lot. I'm doing probably somewhere between 1.7 and 2.0 most of the time. And they're still just sat behind me doing absolutely nothing. So the guy who was about 20 yards up the road, he's probably about 200-300 now. Got some C's behind us who are starting to very, very slowly close the gap. But yeah, it's not a lot happening right now. But I suspect in about 5 minutes' time, probably have a group of 5 or 6.
Yeah, I mean, looking at Zwift Power, I can't quite see who that's you're with, but I don't believe they're on Zwift Power, so they're certainly maybe not going for the race and quite happy just to use your wheels, a bit of a draft.
I think they might have mistaken this for a social ride.
Much incentive for them to pull ahead of you, although I can see one of them is pulling ahead, so maybe you need to just give them a bit of an elbow in there, see if they'll pull through, but if not, it looks like who have we got behind you? Possibly even, I don't know if it's the Bs approaching the Cs. Looks like Dennis Wade, and we've got other groups. So Dennis Wade appears to be the only rider on Zwift Power in the group immediately behind, but there is chunks of other riders, 3 or 4.
Very surprised that Dennis Wade was behind. I thought he'd be in my group at the front.
Dennis Wade, yeah, I mean, he's got good power. I would have thought he might be able to hold onto that group in front, but you never know. He possibly just got caught out on the Aqueduct at the wrong time. If you didn't push over that and get with the group, then it's very easily to get dropped. But I suspect he'll sit in, he'll catch up with you. The Bs will be approaching quite fast, although they're probably getting driven on by a couple of A riders on the front of the group. So whether there'll be a chance to get on them, we'll have to wait for the later groups. As I'm scanning back just to see exactly where the Bs are.
I think, to be honest, Gordon, at the moment there probably isn't that much point jumping onto the Bs. I suspect these two that I'm with, yes, they might be quicker than me up the hill, so I'm not sure. But I'd expect to be able to jump them on the sprint. And if I'm holding my pace as I am at the moment, I should have got quite a bit of energy at the end, so it's all going to depend on what happens on the hills.
Yeah, you've got 2 primes still to come, and at the moment, unless there's a chance you're going to catch any of the C riders ahead of you by jumping on the wheels, that's the only way it'd be worth actually catching up with anyone. But looking at the gaps on Zwift Power now, it looks like it's nearly 2 minutes gap, probably just over 2 minutes to the next rider. That front C group looks like it's holding together, so they will be powering on. So I don't, even if you get on the wheels of the B, I think it'll be a struggle to catch many C riders. So as you suggest, probably best just to sit in and get some more prime points and just try and beat any of the C riders that are behind you would be my aim for the rest of the race. But yeah, Ian, how is Neil getting on?
Well, we've just seen 3 people with we've now entered the windy stage, which is as much as it's being windy, it's also very bumpy. and you can see if you lose your concentration and don't pick up on the fact that the road is on an incline, you get dropped off the back. And we've seen Neil drop off the back, but he's managed to power himself back in. And then there has, just as you came over to me there was 3 people raced off. I didn't quite catch who it was. So this group has now been split due to the incline. There's somebody who's dropped off right off the back. Just trying to see who that is. No, I can't see that on the screen that I've got. But there's definitely there's a group of 3 that have raced off the front of this group, and they seem to have probably got themselves about a 5 or 10 second lead already.
I believe
So whether that was a
probably
predetermined or whether it's something that just happened, but it seems to be well organised.
looking at Zwift Power, I suspect it's probably there's a couple of C's and a B
Yeah.
rider, so I think it's probably going to be them.
Yeah, they were dragging in the person who was at the front, but I know that person wasn't on Zwift Power. But they do seem to be pulling away the 3 that left at the front. It's one single rider left, but I'm sure they'll get swallowed up by this group. And Neil is just making his way to the front. So Neil's now in a group of 4 people, with John Richardson, with William, and with Freddie.
Looks like Freddie
Freddie, I
Fernandez,
think.
yeah.
Fernandez. So there's the 4
looks
people
like
that I
a
mentioned before.
top 4.
I've formed a group now. They're just, I think, within the next 10 seconds they'll pick up the person that's in front of them, and then hopefully they can form a group, start working a little bit harder, and see if they can't make some inroads into the group in front of them. But we'll just need to make sure who that actually is, because if it is the B and the C, then again they won't count for Zwift Power as well. So we'll just have to work that out once the groups are formed. We'll be able to clearly see that. I think that's what it is. The 3 out front are the 2 C's and a B.
Yeah, I'm not sure if there's 3 or 4 out front, but I believe one of them might be Colin McCarthy, the TFC rider. So I think he's the rider that's immediately in front of them out on his own.
I think he's going to get swamped up by this group of 4.
I'd be half tempted just to leave him out there on his own with the 4 herd riders. If they've got a bit of sense, just leave him out there and see what happens. But sounds like they're getting on all right. Looks like we've got James on screen there. How are you going? Are you still managing to get a wheel, or are you just dragging the other 2 along with you?
I got bored of them and decided to chase up the road for someone else.
Okay.
So I found a couple of riders here. I think they're probably both D's. Not sure, but I can't see the coloured dots. But yeah, so I've got away from my 2 slow friends and found a couple of guys who seem to want to do a little bit more work. So, oh no, actually that's a lie. Turns out it's the same people. Never mind. I think what happened was I went up the road and they chased me, and I thought I'd caught someone else, but it's just them overtaking me. Never mind.
I'm not sure. Just have a look at Zwift Power, whether it's them or not, but it does look like the front of the B group.
It's definitely them.
Well,
but yeah, we've just had the Bs fly straight through us.
Yeah, I think they'll be going way too fast for anyone to jump on them. The front of the Bs are going at some pace. Looking back to Justin, he's at 22 kilometres, so he's probably now just under a kilometre down from the front of the B groups, and at the moment is riding along with an M Hoyer. They're not doing a bad pace, probably just over 3 watts a kilo, probably quite similar to the way James is now been dropped by the front group. These 2 riders have been dropped by the front of the Bs as well, so there's not too much point pushing on trying to catch a large group in front, because it's never going to happen. Might as well sit in a wee bit, wait for the primes, wait for any passing groups, maybe suck up 1 or 2 other riders from the Cs and see if you can form a sort of mini peloton to do some turns in. Although at the moment it does look like Hoyer is working a bit better than James's little group there, so they are taking turns at the moment, which Justin and Hoyer are holding away, looking back the way. It's hard to tell exactly where the next B rider is, probably about 17 seconds back. Then there's a right mix of C's and D's that have come past. Looking even further back, I'm not sure where the A's are. They're probably still a good, possibly 3 or 4 kilometers back the way. And looks like some of the A's They might have even pulled through, actually. Trying to see where exactly the A's are. Looks like the front A's have caught a lot of the B's, so that'll be interesting to see what sort of group the B's. You might find that some of them are going at some pace in this group, but we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, how is Neil getting on, Ian? Is it the same? Have they managed to pull back that, I believe, TFC rider?
No, the TFC rider seems to be making more, making the gap even bigger. So he's just opened it up to about 15 seconds, 10, 15 seconds. Just going through quite a, again, up and down. I don't know whether we're going to start approaching the KOM that I know isn't a measured KOM. I think we might start approaching that soon. So hopefully they can work as a team to get up that and start biting back some of this time. But as you say, if they leave the TFC rider out front, then maybe it'll help later on in the race. But there is a group behind approaching. I think that might be the C's. That looks as if they're approaching quite quickly as well. So they're going to come past just now. Actually, you can see them just coming past.
Yeah, the front of the C's, I can only see a few seconds behind, so they'll probably rip past quite quickly.
They're just coming past Neil's group now and
KOM.
heading off to. So I don't know whether they can. The group of four. It's quite confusing to see actually, but whether the group of four can hold on to those for even if it's just for a few kilometers, it might just break that gap to the rider in front.
Yeah, I believe, I'm not sure exactly where. I believe they are on the KOM by now, or maybe the lower slopes of the KOM. Although, as it's not an official KOM, I don't have the exact start point, but
no, it's definitely it's the start of the KOM. It's gone up to 5%.
Probably
Neil
goes
just
from
seems to maybe have just been dropped slightly, but it's like I say, there's still C riders coming through, so you're not entirely sure.
It's a bit hard to tell where
positioning.
If any of the D riders managed to get in front with the C group, or does it look like any of that D group that he's with managed to hold onto the wheels in front?
Doesn't look like it. No, it looks like they are all again forming the same group. I can see John Richardson there. I can see Freddie, and William is close behind as well, actually. So I'm sure he'll make up that time. There's the kind of the second wave of the C's coming through. You can see Ben Boynton coming through. I think that's Freddie there, just coming over. That's just gone over the start. I think that's the start of the KOM banner on the road. This is where Neil now just needs to get into a groove and make sure he doesn't get dropped significantly from the group in front of him. John Richardson's in front. Fred is in front. And the C riders. There's one or two more C riders, but it's mainly now left the 4D riders that we've been talking about.
Yeah, it's definitely the lower slopes of the KOM there. I don't know, James, have you hit the KOM yet? Has it started to kick up?
Feels like it. Currently on about 7-8% gradient, so I think we've got about a 5-minute climb before we turn off. These are very foothills in the front two. Got a group of about 5 or 6, catching up some of the D's in front. You can see there's, looking at my companion app, there's a load of B's that I follow, not too far in front. So catching up to them, and yeah, on the hill for about 5 minutes. See how we go.
Good stuff. We'll cut back to the moment once you maybe got over the hill and managed to catch your breath. But back onto Justin, which as well, looks like he's at the bottom of the hill. Quite similar to sort of James there, although he doesn't really have a group. M. Hoyer that he was riding with is now 5 or 6 seconds up the road, just as we see Justin throw down the feather power up on the lower slopes. So he's obviously feeling it or wanting to use that early, possibly trying to push up to Hoyer and try and get a bit of a draft up this hill. We're not going at a great pace, 19 kilometres, 20 kilometres an hour, but it's enough to still get a draft. So if you can hang on to the wheels of anyone, it's worth it. Looking forward, there's just riders scattered everywhere. It's C riders, it's D riders. He's now down about 10 metres behind the back from Hoyer, so Just give him a second, see if he can push on and get onto that wheel again. It's worth it, just trying to push up the hill. Looking back the way, there's a B rider. Looks like, I think it's Chris Lambert, or check the name, but Lambert's now only 5 or 6 seconds behind, maybe 8, although the hill's a bit not obviously clear on the gap. Sometimes you see the gaps close right down as we sit at the bottom of the hills, and then they'll go up as soon as they go over the top. But he's just about got onto the back wheel, maybe a second away from it at the moment, but pushing up the hill. You'll actually probably see James fairly soon. It looks like about 18, 20 seconds on the hill. So it might actually come together and maybe even possibly work with James. That would be good. We shall see, depending how James gets on over the hill. But Ian, how's Neil getting on? Is he approaching the top of the hill yet?
I think he's probably got another minute or so. He seems to be a little bit. He's isolated himself slightly. John and Freddie Fernandez have caught up with Colin. All the splits down the side of my screen seem to be a little bit off, but visually they look round about 10-15 seconds ahead. William looks as if he's dropped off slightly as well, and is sat with. He's sat. I think the bees are now going to come and come flying past quite soon as well. They're around about 10-15 seconds behind, so I'm sure it won't be long before they confuse me even further.
Yeah, it is somewhat confusing. Certainly, even watching Justin going up this hill, you've seen groups of riders ahead. Most of them aren't actually in his category. It's the C's and the D's that he's passing. He's just pushing good numbers up here. Obviously, it's not an official KOM, so they don't have to go crazy and tire yourself out. But as I said before, it is worth trying to get over the hill with some riders. And I'm just trying to see if we can spot James. Looks like Justin's just passing James there. I don't know how you're getting on, James. You got any breath for the top?
Yeah, I'm okay. We're on a slightly flatter bit now. I'm guessing we're about halfway up. Got no sort of concept of where I am in relation to Neil, but I've just gone over 27 kilometres. So I don't think there's too much more of this climb, but it's starting to feel it.
Neil's at 28.2, and he's just approaching the top. So I'd say the top is going to be at about 28.3 kilometers.
Looks like it, and it looks like Justin was that rider that came past you there, James, which he's now got a 2-second gap on you. So looks like he's pulling away. But looking at your screen, you do have a nice little group there. But as I believe Neil is probably on the last corner, just coming round to the KOM banner. I don't know. Can you see the KOM banner yet, Ian?
Yep, he's just literally going under it now. I think for the last 0.1 of a kilometer, it's actually flat and downhill. So he's now at -4, -5%. So hopefully he'll get to a speed. I hope we can get to a super tuck. He's maybe not actually. It's just flattening out slightly. It might not be steep enough. It would be good, I think.
Down the hill, I think once myself. I'm not quite sure if it's steep enough for a super tuck.
Just not quite steep enough. He's sat around a 53, 54, 55 kilometers per hour.
It's a bit of a killer just when you want to rest.
Yeah, but he's resting his legs, and hopefully can then pick up the pace and try and catch the group in front again. Although they do seem to have raced on a little bit.
And does it look like any of the D riders are in the group in front, or is there any idea of where riders are?
Yeah, we've got John and Colin, John Richardson and Colin from TFC, and Freddie Fernandez have got a group, and they're around about 30 seconds ahead of Neil. And that's the front of the race on Zwift Power. Neil's just gone into a super tuck now, so probably the second half of the downhill is where you can relax a little bit, try and rest those legs for the second half of the race.
Yeah, absolutely. So we come over the back of this KOM, and then we head straight into the Aqueduct KOM forward, which is an official KOM climb. So certainly worth resting your legs on that downhill there, but not if you're going to get dropped is the danger. So that's probably the issue with this course here. The non-official KOM followed by the Aqueduct KOM comes right after one after another. So you can afford to rest up a wee bit, but not get dropped as we see what happened, which they're looking good though. Anyway, Neil, if he can get on the back end of those riders, probably a bit of plan. But looking back at Justin,
I think Neil, well, won't mind me saying, he's carrying a little bit more weight than the group in front, so he is managing to pick up. He's managing to super tuck where possible, and I think he's already picked up 10 seconds on them. So it looks like he's bringing that gap down. Whether when they get back onto the flat, the three of them are going to start working as a team to try and keep Neil off the back. But I think Neil's working hard. He's got them in his sight. He's got the three of them. I can see them in his sights. So I think he's just trying to rest his legs and work where he needs to work to try and make up that gap. So I think he's managing it well. He's got it down to around about 15 seconds now. So
excellent, good stuff. So looking back at Justin the Bees, it looks like he's approaching just the top of that KOM. He's maybe got the sort of last corner. A couple of riders ahead. He's still 2 seconds off Hoyer, which seems like all the way up that KOM. He was sat with that 2 second gap and has not quite managed to close it. But as we're coming around the corner, I'm going to hit that downhill as well. Chance to get a bit of a rest. Looking back the way, he's now got a 20-30 second gap to the Bees, although it does seem a number of B riders behind him if they can form up a group. But on the downhill now, coming down, it's quite spread out. I can see a couple of riders ahead, a couple of B riders, but there's 2 seconds ahead, 8 seconds ahead. The C's floating around in between and whatnot. So chance for a quick rest before the KOM, but I'll see how it comes together. It'll be like Neil's group, I suspect, individual riders at the moment, and depending who they can form up with on the downhill. But looks like he set a half decent time up that KOM, although it officially doesn't count. We'll see what they do when they come around to the last KOM up. We do the forward side of that KOM, though it comes at nearly 50 odd kilometers, I believe it is, 55 kilometers. So I'm sure we'll see some tired legs by that point. But looking back, James, is that you hit the top of the KOM? How did it feel?
Yeah, just over the top. Managed to sort of stay at the front of my little group of people that don't do any work. A's have absolutely flown by. Lots of B's have gone past as well. A few more behind. I think I've actually got a gap of maybe 5 seconds on my group now. So I expect that to come back together fairly quickly at the bottom. But just going to try and conserve a little bit. I think it's only like 5k until the aqueduct. So want to try and have a little bit of energy left for that, and try and hit 400 going over again. But we'll see how that plays out. Not too far to go.
Do you know, did you manage to capture your time over the aqueduct on the first time? Do you know what sort of position you came?
Fairly slow, I think, is the answer.
Yeah, the aqueduct's about 34 kilometers, so another 5 kilometers, which I suspect probably take about 10 minutes time. So no point smashing it out. If there's a little group behind you, I probably would wait for them, see how they get on. But as you say, the A group have come flying through. Whether there'll be any help to probably Justin, they're going to catch next. I'm just trying to see how far behind they are. Justin's looking at Justin. They're about 40 seconds behind him. Although they're still pushing for 4 or 5 watts a kilo, which must be on the downhill on the backside of the KOM. So I think Justin will have a hard job trying to hold on to their wheels. Certainly by the time they hit the aqueduct KOM, they will fly away because that A group is moving pretty quickly. Justin at the moment, he's out on his own completely. Hoyer is now pulled out a 30-second gap. He's got 5 seconds to a D rider in front, although he's not going at a great pace. So unfortunately, that won't be much assistance. And he's got a C rider and another D riders behind. We do see, I guess, Paul Shuckero 24 seconds back in the Bs. So if that comes back more together, if Paul manages to get a little boost up with the A's, we might find it coming back together. But with the aqueduct still to come, we'll just split apart again, is most likely what will happen. But this A group's now down to 25 seconds. We'll cut back to Justin in a moment, just see if he gets a chance to get on this A group. But Ian, how is Neil? Has he managed to get back on with the other riders?
Not yet, but he's just found himself a little group of C and another D rider that doesn't appear to be on Zwift Power, but They're sat at around about 2.4, 2.5. You could clearly see when they hit the flat after the KOM that the legs were all tired. They were sat at 1.8, 1.9, and the group in front that he's chasing are sat at that, still sat at that kind of pace. They're just picking it up slightly now, but Neil's group's now being passed by some Bs. Hopefully he can retain the 2 or 3 people that he had around him, because he was starting to eat up that gap slightly. But they have that gap is now around about 30 seconds. So he needs to work with this group around him and stick with it to try and really eat up some of this time. Hopefully, for Neil's sake, the group in front don't pick up any of these B riders to pull away further. But we're just approaching. We're just at 33.8, so I think we're just coming up to the Aqueduct KOM.
Yeah, I think they'll struggle. Even if they do get on the Bs, they'll get dropped on that KOM at 34 kilometres. So we'll see in a moment. But looking back at Justin, which he's got now, looks like the A rider's just a second behind him. We'll just see if he's going to make any attempt to jump on their wheels. But I suspect this A grouper, they're absolutely flying along. 4 or 5 watts a kilo. I think if Justin even tried to jump on the wheel, he'd burn out. Though I have to see, looks like Paul Shuckro's used that group to pull up and is on the back of the A group, which if Justin can do the same, then there might even be an opportunity to catch up with some of the Bs, but he's just sitting on the back of this group. Might go against him, because certainly Paul Shuckro is putting the effort to stay with the A group in front of him. At the moment, it looks like Justin's just going to get passed by this A group. We've got one over, it's a D rider directly in front, but looks like Paul Shuckro's used the group pretty well to slingshot himself past Justin. So whether he was aware of that and didn't see him in the group, or just getting pretty tired now, been riding nearly 50 minutes. A lot of it's been on his own here at the moment, and probably just waiting for a slightly slower group to come, that front A group. You're going to have to work pretty hard to hold onto their wheel for any length of time. But how is Neil doing? Has he hit the KOM yet?
He has, and he's just coming up to the top of it. He was obviously resting his legs using that group, and as soon as he went over the line, he rocketed to about 5.5 watts per kilogram, and within about 4 seconds had caught up with Colin from TFC. So he's now sat with Colin, and he's just gone over. John Richardson seems to have taken the KOM. Neil is 10th, although there are some B and C riders in between them. Fred is in there as well at 7. So again, they've done quite well on those. And Neil's still in the same group as he was before, but it's now there's now 5 of them, and that includes the TFC. So there's still two more D riders out front. John Richardson appears to be out front, but there is just some B and C riders that's just making it difficult to pick out exactly how far ahead he is. But John seems to be maybe he's found himself a group to help him pull himself away, but he seems to be establishing himself, and Freddie's just dropped off from him. So hopefully that may form into a group later on as well.
Yeah, very good. So looking back to Justin here, it looks like Paul Shuckro, as I suspected, didn't quite hang with that A group for quite as long as he'd maybe hoped. He has dropped off the back. So Justin and Paul have come together, and looks like hopefully going to work together, both being B riders. There's no one really else round about, so it's best if they can work together a wee bit and see how they get on. Looking at the distances, they must be just about hit the bottom of the KOM. I think it starts about 34 kilometres, which I make them at 34 kilometres, possibly a wee bit further to this official start line. We'll just give it a minute just to see how they get on when they come round in the corner. If we can get the official KOM marker on the road, I believe it's somewhere just where we start hitting the sort of concrete bridge section. Again, it's another short one. It's only 400 metres as we're passing the line. Certainly Justin's kicking up, just over 4, 3.5. Paul in front's not doing very much, still just holding about 2.5 at the moment. So I expect that push from Paul with the A riders has probably burnt him out a wee bit, although it did make him catch Justin as Justin pushes up to 5-6 watts a kilo up to the KOM banner around the corner as it flattens out. Paul as well, he is behind, but not pushing quite as strong. So definitely that catch to Justin caught him out a wee bit, although it's probably worth doing it. Justin still pushing up to the line, 3.5, dropping off the power a wee bit now, but we'll just see how he comes across the line. It looks like the winning time was 31.88, and Justin appears to be 34th over the line. So I suspect that front B group is still held together quite well, so they'll get quite a bit of draft power-ups going through there, but not too bad. But cutting back, I think James must be just about to hit the KOM. Can you see it yet?
Just on it now.
Okay, well, I'll come back to James in a moment as he's hitting the KOM. I can see the power numbers going up a wee bit, definitely 320 watts. Probably trying to hold somewhere around that 4 watts a kilo, possibly up here, maybe even 5 pushing. I can see him hitting the 400 watts and the heart rate going up as well. It's not a short KOM, but certainly as a leg snapper just round the corner, and it will tire you out. But we'll see if we can try and get a rough estimate of where he came over that KOM just as he passes the line, hopefully in just a second. James, can you see roughly where you came on the leaderboard?
Not yet. About 2/3 of the way down.
Okay, not bad, but yeah, it looks like a tough little KOM anyway. 400-meter climb, it certainly will take it out of you, just to see what sort of group you can get with. I'm not quite sure exactly what riders are round about you now after that. The danger is just trying to spot the rider that's going to work with you. As you've found so far, not everyone necessarily wants to work, and they're quite happy sitting in your wheels, particularly if they are lower categories. They're not going to put in too much effort, which is kind of where we found Justin as well. He has got away from Paul Shucker over that KOM, but he is sitting on his own at the moment. But how is Neil getting on, Ian? Has he got a good group over the other side of the KOM?
He's done really, really well. He's brought it all back together. I won't say just him, but his group, him and his group, they temporarily dropped the TFC rider, but he worked his way back onto the group, and they've worked their way up to the front two. So Freddie and John Richardson are in this group as well now. They've just been passed by a marauding group of bees that seem to just fly by. Sorry, was it? Yeah.
A large number of riders, whether there's any season there as well that might sort of form up a bigger group with Neil.
Yeah, but the front of the race on Zwift Power is all within this group. So I think maybe John has looked at it and realised and remembered that the race is 60 kilometres and not 35 to 40, which is the normal distance. And I think he's realised he's not going to get to the end if he stays out front on his own. And it is really, really hard to stick with those Bs and even the Cs. The Cs seem to be really, really quick as well. So it's hard to stick with those. So I think the B group seem to be just sticking with this group, but I'm sure it won't be long before the Bs head off as well and leave this group to race amongst themselves.
It does look like a rather large group at the moment Neil's with, so possibly might find they're all just happy sitting in, looking at the sort of race profile. We're just over where distance-wise, we're approaching up to about 40 kilometres. Yep. There's not actually much action until we probably hit the last KOM at almost 55 kilometres. We've got a bit of the rolling section, but no official climbs, and certainly quite a very flat section for the next sort of 10 to 15 kilometres even before the rollers. So you might find that all categories are just happy cruising along like this. Unless anyone's going to make a break for it on their own, they'll be quite happy just to sit in and take a rest.
The Bs do seem to be sat at around about 2.5, 2.6, which if they're sat at the front, then I'm sure you can sit in the draft at slightly less than that. But I can imagine it won't be long before those numbers spike again, and the Bs will leave the front of the group. But as you say, there's nothing now for another 15 kilometers. So whether they do need to recoup and try and prepare for the final KOM.
Absolutely. I don't know, James, how are you getting on? Have you managed to find anyone to ride with, or are you doing a solo TT effort?
It's pretty much solo until literally probably I'd say 5-10 seconds ago. got one D ride in front of me, and one of the C's from behind's just caught up and gone in front. But it looks like we're going to form a bit of a gruppetto now, and we've got 18 kilometres to the last climb. So actually, yep, group of 3. So it'd be nice to see some other people.
Yeah, that'll be good to get a bit of a rest if you can work together. I don't know if can you see, are they C riders or the GC competition riders that you've got round about, or are they other sort of categories?
One's a D, one's a C. So
Okay.
It's a battle for 25th place.
Yeah, well, every point counts, but yeah, it's going to be a hard job catching anyone in front, although you might find 1 or 2 C riders further up the road as they get popped off from the faster groups fall back towards you, but time will tell and see. But we're still the last KOM to come. I wouldn't be going too crazy. Setting a good time up that KOM is where you'll gain points rather than on 1 or 2 GC riders at the moment. But yeah, good luck at the moment. We'll cut back to you in a wee bit. Cutting back into Justin, our B rider. He does still appear to be in a bit of no man's land here. Just trying to look around for a bit of help. He's at 38 kilometres. He's got 1 D rider in front, which possibly is not going to be much use, judging by the pace that they're doing. He's got a C rider and Paul Shuckero 30 seconds back. I wonder whether it'd be worth even waiting for Paul, trying to work together a wee bit, or whether all the B riders that are ahead are just too far gone now and they're not going to catch him. We have a quick check of Zwift Power. It looks like the gap's about a minute. Probably a minute to a minute and a half to the next B group up the road. So depending if he can work with Paul, if they come back together though, 30 seconds apart, he is going to have to sit up and wait for him to catch, which is not ideal. So we'll just have to see at the moment, see if they get on. There might be possibly 1 or 2 A riders still to come through, but the field is very scattered out at the moment. The main A group's gone through, the main B group's well away from him. He's not going to catch them at the moment, but not too bad. Ian, how's Neil getting on? Is that group still holding? Has he managed to hold on to the faster C's and B riders?
These C's have gone off into the distance, but there's a group. He's now in a group of 5 with John and Williams done fantastically to get back onto the group. Whether he grabbed onto that group of B's and C's, at one point I think he was around about a minute behind, maybe not quite as far as a minute behind, but he's now back in the race and back in the front group. So there's 4 of them. Freddie seems to, I can't actually see him, but on Zwift Power is saying that he's still there. But I can't see Freddie. But the front of the race is this group, so I can imagine this group will sit together now. They've probably got about another 15 kilometers before the start of the final KOM. The road will be a slightly bumpy. It's not too bad, so that it does give them an opportunity to try and rest the legs, maybe soft pedal a little bit in the draft, and hopefully all of them can work together so that we can have a good race up the final KOM and down the other side, and see how we go. They're just getting passed by a group of A's, which I don't think they're going to hold on to. No, they've gone straight past. So that's not going to cause any disruption or anybody grabbing onto it. They're just too quick. But no, Neil's doing well. He's at the front now, sat around about 2.2, 2.3. Everyone seems to be taking a turn, so it's all very sociable.
Yeah, I'm just wondering whether with the 4 herd riders for you, 1 TFC rider, whether there's any communication going on, whether they're thinking about making any attacks, whether they're all just happy sitting waiting for the KOM. But if they wanted to, they could try and attack this TFC rider, but they seem happy at the moment. But no, James, how are you getting on? Have you managed to find a few friends now?
Yeah, still got a group of 3. We're just gradually ploughing along at around about 2.0, so nothing very exciting. Got about 15k to the hill. I suspect we'll all be together until then.
Excellent, good stuff. Justin, the other rider, we're following them in Cap B. It still looks like he's doing a solo TT at the moment. He's at 40 kilometers, which I believe, where is that? So that's sort of between our other two featured riders. He's probably a couple of kilometers behind Neil and just ahead of James, but he's doing a bit of a solo TTF at the moment, so burning up some matches. Looking back, Paul Shuckero group is now only 15 seconds behind, so as I suspected, they'd be better probably if he just eased up a wee bit and let Paul catch him and try and work with him. It looks like there's maybe another B rider in that group as well, an Arhay. Possibly, yeah. So looks like a couple of B riders approaching them, catching them up, and I suspect they will catch up. I wouldn't leave it too long round this flat bit. Let them catch and do a bit of work with them as a group, because as we're finding out from James there, it's not much fun riding alone. So if you can find at least 2 or 3 to work with, take a turn, it'll certainly save the legs and give you a better chance of catching anyone ahead. And looking forward, I'll just see if that group's going out the way to the riders ahead, which, yeah, it looks like it's nearly a 2-minute group to any of the B riders in front of Justin. So there's not too much point of him pushing on alone at the moment. The gap behind is now down to 10 seconds to Paul, and there's also a C rider in there, Nigeland, by the look of it. So we'll give it a minute or two, see if he manages to jump on this group, as long as Paul doesn't just slingshot past him again. And he'll find himself back doing a solo TT, which is not much fun. But yeah, Ian, how's Neil? Same as we were before, is it? A nice group of 5 of them at the front, or have anyone tried any attacks or anything?
No, the group of 5 retains as a group of 5. It's Freddie, as I was saying before. I don't know whether he's had a mechanical problem or a technical problem, but he seems to have dropped back 5 or 6 minutes. And I hadn't seen him actually in the race. So it's unfortunately he's not in the front group, and there's a rider, a Japanese rider, A Kaz, that isn't on Zwift Power, that forms part of this group 5. Just been passed by a group of A's and B's, I think it was. So there is, of this front group of 5, I think there's 4 of them in the race, and it'll probably come down to one of these guys that maybe just hits that final KOM and hits it well. But we'll see. We're at 44 kilometers, so we've still got around about 10 kilometers to go before the 10 kilometers. So it's probably another 15-20 minutes, maybe slightly longer, depending on the terrain, until they get to the start of that. And that's where I think the race will start. Hopefully they're resting their legs now sensibly as a group, to give them all as good a chance as possible to get up the KOM as quickly as possible. So I'm sure as soon as they hit the start of that KOM, we'll start seeing attacks. Neil's just made his way to the front to do his 30 seconds or a minute at the front, but they, as I said before, they all seem to be doing a good stint at the front. So it's a sociable way of racing. It's good.
Is it the TFC ride as well doing a turn, or is he just happy using the herd to sit on the front for him? What
No,
sort of
no,
his plan?
he's actually just moved out to the front now. So
Okay.
he's I think he has his climbing wheels on his bike. So maybe he will do well on the KOM against 2 Trons in the group, Tron bikes in the group. So it may come down to something just as small as that, the weight of the bike, or the type of wheel selected. But this group's sitting nicely at, I'd say, an average of 2, maybe slightly higher than that. So it does look like they are just slightly soft pedaling, slightly just trying to recoup their legs, because I'm sure they're all aware of what's coming in the next 10 to 15 minutes.
Yep, absolutely. So, Justin appears to have found a friend after a long time over that KOM. I suspected Arhay, I'll try and grab the first name in a minute, and Paul Shuckero have caught him up. Plus, there's also a C rider that's managed to hang on these C's on these wheels as well. So we've got a little mini group of about 4 of them, quite similar to Neil and the D's there. It looks like they're quite happy. They're Cat Bs, but they're running along probably between 2.5 to 3, so quite similar to Neil's and possibly even James and the Seas there. Taking it as easy as they can. Everyone knows the KOM still to come. Taking a rest round here. If we just try and catch on Zwift Power where these riders are, which it's got very messy now with all sorts of categories riding together in between each other. A bit like the other week when we were riding Crit City. It's sometimes a bit hard to tell exactly who you're riding with or against at this point, but doing all right at the moment. But have we just cut back to James? Is your group still behaving, or is anyone trying to pick up the pace?
They just tried to drop me, which wasn't very polite at all. Just about back onto the back of them again, but had to work. I think I was probably partly napping, but one of the guys just went up the front a bit, and then the others followed, and now they've sat back down again.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see whether that was a planned attack or not. If it was, they'll possibly try it again, or as you say, probably just caught napping if they were distracted for a second. It's so easily done to get dropped. But yeah, we'll cut back to you in a moment. But back to Paul's group at the moment. They're catching up with a little mini group ahead, although I believe it's probably C's and D riders, so they should fly through them pretty quickly. Although this B group's not doing a massively high pace. They will possibly might even form up as a bigger group and come back together. Looking up the road, it won't be a great deal of time before he possibly even catches up with Neil's group. This is getting strung out. They are picking up the pace. Over 3 watts a kilo at least now, which should be fairly comfortable for a B rider as they're approaching the back of this group. And we appear to have dropped. No, he's still there. Paul is on the back wheel, but possibly just out of sight, which they're going along nicely, which there's just 1 or 2 riders out on the road everywhere here and there. It's very small groups at the moment. I suspect maybe the very front, the A's and the B's have got larger groups at the nose end of the race, but at the moment, Paul and Justin here. We still got the C rider hanging in, which is doing a good job, and Hay as well. Even some of these D riders, it looks like they're holding onto the wheels. So everyone that can is using the opportunity to try and draft a group in front and get any little advantages they can. But with the KOM still to come, there's a lot of riders taking it slightly easier as well. But how's Neil looking? Has he found any more riders or groups passing yet, or how's it doing?
No, there's the occasional A and B rider that goes past, but we've just gone past the lighthouse, and we are just about to approach the marina, I believe. So we're back onto the flat roads that we started on and heading back towards the pen. And I think at some point we will turn off this road and start approaching the final KOM. But no, everyone, as I said before, is taking the turn. Colin seems to just be, I think he's not really heading off the front. He's only a few seconds off the front. I'm sure the group will catch him quite quickly. But everybody's taken their turn on the front. But it's not. It's almost the same as when they were heading in the other direction at the start. It's that they're just preparing themselves, I feel, for the climb that's going to come. Colin does actually seem to be pulling out more of a lead. Whether he feels he can go for it from this point forward, or whether he's just caught everybody napping slightly, I'm not sure. But there doesn't seem to be too much concern within the group. Neil's just moved to the front now. Whether there's an A rider just gone past, which isn't going to be any use to anybody to form a group. So I think Neil will just drive this forward. It's exactly what he's doing now. He's just driving it forward. He's just gone up to 2.83, and he's just starting to reel him back in now, reeling the TFC rider.
Yeah, it's possibly not a bad plan just to leave that TFC rider out there if he's wanting to push off on his own. Just sort of leave him dangling, working. If the 4 riders behind can keep on rotating, it will tire out that TFC rider. So I don't know if I was that TFC rider, I'd either try and hammer it up the road or just sit in the group and sit in and take the draft at the moment. I wouldn't be sitting 10, 20 metres ahead just burning matches on my own, but maybe it's a plan. We'll have to give it a few minutes, see if that gap goes out or not, but looking good. But Justin and the Bees, as I suspected, it's sort of come all back together. We now have about 8 riders in this little group, a right mixture of Bs through to Ds riders. Not a massively high pace, even probably around about 2.8 to 3. Justin's doing 2.7, 2.6. Looking at his overall power is 3.2. That's probably, it's not bad going. I mean, his 20-minute power, I believe, is around 3.6. And we're way beyond the 20-minute now. Obviously, we're over 70 minutes. So the power numbers will be dropping off, and I'm just trying to conserve a bit of energy before we hit the hill. But this is looking good. There's about 8 in this group. If I can try and see if they're actually going to catch up with any of the B riders in front. There was as much as a 2-minute gap. It's still sitting quite high. It's possibly even 2.5 minutes now. So it doesn't look like they're going to catch anyone. And the front of the Bs as well looks like they're still quite a group together. And possibly even the A's. Yeah, the front of the A's look like they're similar. They are all grouped together, but thankfully Justin's found a bit bigger of a group. Certainly the first part over the KOM, he wasn't really riding with everyone, burning a few matches, getting a bit of a relief now, and resting up before he hits the KOM. And James, how are we getting on? Is your group behaving, or are there any more attacks since we last spoke to you?
I think fairly well behaved since we last spoke to you. We're at about 46.5 kilometres, so well under 10 to big climb now, and we've got about 15.5 to finish. Just going, well, about to head through the marina now. Got a couple of Ds in front of us. We're catching very, very slowly, but I suspect they'll want to join our party because it's fun here.
How is the party? Is everyone taking their turn, or are you sitting in just using the draft to the maximum?
Bit of both, really. I mean, to be honest, I was sitting in for quite a while, but this very second I'm in the front by about half a foot. So it's everyone's having a turn pretty much.
Good stuff. So looking back, Justin, he seems to be getting nearer and nearer Neil's group. I believe the gap's probably down to now about 600-700 meters as we're sitting the start of the rollers. So I suspect that gap might come down quite quickly. Looking on the board, it's about 1:15:16. So, and the pace is starting to pick up as we're hitting these rollers. How is Neil getting on the rollers? Are the group behaving, or are they starting to attack as the inclines go up and down?
Managed to catch Colin, so they're now a group of 5, but there is just, with every little kicker, there seems to be somebody either dropping off or racing ahead, so but only by a few seconds, and then it seems to, whenever we come down the other side, it forms back into a group of 5, so I think it's maybe people just being caught off guard more than anything, more than anybody trying to actually form an attack. So we're just coming up to 50 kilometers. We're at 49.6. So we have another 5 or 6 kilometers to go before we hit the foot of the final KOM, which I'm sure is what all these riders are thinking about now.
So even I did this, or sort of record this roll a bit on the TTs the other night. And certainly, even when you're trying to stay together, it can be hard as the track rolls up and down. Any sort of surge in power, it's easy to pull away or get dropped. So you kind of have to be on the ball and watch the gaps. But it'd be interesting to see if they get out through the rollers together before you hit the KOM, and then it'll be a bit of an individual effort on the uphill. Looking back the way, Justin as well is at the back of the rollers. So the gaps now, I mean, it's now under a minute, so they've closed down 15 seconds to Neil's group quite quickly. Obviously, they're not competing against each other. They will find them catching up on the road and start to see each other. Not too bad. But James, the rollers in sight yet for yourself?
Just coming on to them now. The front 2 of our group decided the sprint was a sprint, so they've gone off the front a bit, but we're just pulling them back in again, I think. But we are just coming onto rollers, so that'll be fun, really.
sounds like you can't wait for that. I've got that enjoyment possibly tomorrow, but we shall see. But it's good actually having to watch this course, see with the sprints and the KOMs or the non-sprints, as we see one or two people getting caught out, and it looks like they are actually sprinting for the primes, although they'll be disappointed to find out that they don't actually count for anything at the end and burning some matches. But how is Neil getting on, Ian? Has he managed to get through the end of the rollers? Are they still hanging together?
They've probably got about another few minutes to come out the other side. It seems Colin has tried to push again. So whether it is a concerted effort to attack at this point, whether he feels as if he needs to attack now to try and get ahead before the KOM, I'm not sure, but or whether he's trying to push it to try and tire everybody out and to force everybody to chase him. I'm just not sure, but he seems to be getting ahead by 10-15 seconds and then being brought back in. Whether that's his tactic, I'm just not sure. A couple of sea riders just coming past, so maybe Colin might try and latch onto them, but they do seem to be going slightly quicker. So I'm not sure he'll be able to stick with them for too long. And that's Colin now just back into the group again. We're at 51.
Interesting to see how they
kilometers.
Get on over the KOM. They've obviously ridden together for the last probably half hour, 45 minutes. So whether they'll get any attacks, suppose individually they'll go up the KOM at whatever pace they can, and then see how they group down before a sprint finish. Pretty much downhill for the last kilometre or two, so it'll be an interesting one. But we can see the gap. Justin now, he looks like he's only about 30 seconds behind your group. As indicated before, probably not going to be much use, but just interesting to see where they are on the road, how long it takes the categories behind to catch up. Although they are covering this course fairly quickly. I reckon the Ds were going to be pushing on 2 hours, and I don't think they will be far off that, but possibly slightly quicker than we thought before. But it looks like Justin's coming out the back end of this rollers with Richard Hay and Paul Shuckero, both hard riders, and the sea rider as well is hanging on. Excellent. And so still a group of 4 of them coming out the rollers, and we'll be heading round towards the KOM at the moment. But if we cut back to James, it looks like you're possibly doing a little bit of a solo TT at the minute.
Not quite. I've got one guy with me. The 2 guys that sprinted off earlier managed to pull away a bit, and I'm cramping quite nicely in my leg. So I didn't really fancy going off chasing, so I'm going to try and hold in here and do a bit on the hill when I get to the finish. But I don't think I'm going to have too much left in me.
Yeah, it's a bit of a killer with the KOM coming after it so late in this race, 54 kilometres in. It's quite different to the previous rounds that we've had of the series, where they've been probably about a maximum of an hour, or even an hour and 10. Some of them are even quite shorter. So it's definitely the longest stage in the series, and it'll be quite different for a lot of the riders, with a lot of flat sections. And it looks like some of them have been sitting in and getting a bit of draft, but it certainly takes it out with you riding this long at a higher pace. But as we're just looking at Justin here, he's looks like an A rider. It looks like an A rider with a KOM jersey. So I wonder if this A rider is just sitting in and waiting for the KOMs and doing a bit of the lower, sort of the earlier rounds of the series where we had riders just hitting the primes and not so much going for GC, because most of the A group are long gone from this this sort of stage of the race here. They're way up the road. So got a group of 5 or 6 with Justin coming out the rollers. Trying to see where we are on the map, but looks like we're just doing the round the loop of the wheel or something, whatever it looks like on the ground. And we should be hitting the KOM forward direction in about 1.5 kilometres, which I believe Neil can't be far up the road. He's probably, could even be Neil's group. No, it looks about 15 seconds ahead, but is Neil's group still holding together, Ian?
Yeah, we're just at 53 kilometres. So a couple of kilometres to go. I've just been looking at the KOMs and from the notes I've made, I think this final KOM is going to be important, and the GC as well. It's going to be close between all 4 of these at the front. They've all seemed to have done quite well in one of the KOMs. So I think if Neil can really push it up here. He should have an advantage as well when we come over the other side. With the extra weight and the downhill, it's a slight advantage, but I think in racing you need to take every advantage you've got. So I think it is going to be close on the points. So it's going to be really important that nobody gets dropped. I think if you get dropped on this climb here, there's a chance that might be the difference between winning or getting on the podium or not. I think so. It's going to be an important climb for them.
We are just seeing, it looks like Justin's group coming through at the moment. I saw a power up getting dropped from the D riders there, a draft power up. Does it look like anyone's trying to get onto this group, or what's happening?
Not really. No, I think they've gone through a little bit too quickly. Neil. No, they are trying to hold on to it, but whether they can, there is a gap forming between Neil and John. That I think the two of them have tried to hold on to the group, and William and Colin have dropped back slightly, but they're only by maybe 2 or 3 seconds. John seems to have latched onto the group, and Neil is putting in an effort. William's putting in an effort to try and make up that gap that I was just talking about. And I think they have managed to stay on this group of Bs and Cs, and I think there might be one A rider in there as well, actually. And Williams made up that gap fantastically. So there's the 3 of them, and Colin just seems to maybe have dropped back a little bit. Can't quite see that on the screen. Time-wise, it seems to be fine, but I think it looks like he may have dropped back slightly.
Does seem to have drifted out about 10 seconds, so that'd be a good move, even if they can only just hang on this group for a kilometre or half a kilometre. It might be enough. I mean, I can see Colin now pushing 5.96 watts a kilo, so he's trying to get back on, certainly, but with a gap of 10 seconds, it's going to be hard.
Whether those efforts over the last 15-20 minutes of trying to stretch it has actually come back to haunt him a little bit. But he's putting in, he's trying to put in efforts to make up the gap. But I think unless he flies up the KOM, I think he may have left it too late.
Yeah, we'll just have to see with the KOM. I mean, I don't think any of these D riders are going to hold on to Justin's group going up the KOM, but they've managed to get a 5 or 10 seconds back on McCarthy there. I think they said it was Craig. So that might be enough just to beat them on the GC as we're approaching the lower slopes of the KOM. We're not quite there yet. I had the KOM down as about 55 kilometres, so we've probably got a few hundred metres before it technically starts. And then we'll have the climb. Obviously done the reverse section of it already today, so the riders have a rough idea how long it's going to take for a Cat D this far into a race. We're probably looking at somewhere around 7 minutes, maybe 8 minutes. So I'll be a bit tired. As we're about
William and John seem to have cottoned onto that group, and Neil's just dropped back slightly, and Colin McCartney is further back again.
That's a very good job there from William and John. No, it's certainly, if you can use the group in front of you, it's worth it. As I said, just getting that, I mean, sitting on that group, it looks like Colin's now 25 seconds back. Even if he really hammers the KOM, it might be enough to catch William and John, which could be the difference. You can see Neil's 12 seconds back. But yeah, just so we're approaching the bottom of the KOM, we'll cut back to both of them in a moment, see how they're getting on. James, how are you getting on approaching the bottom of the KOM? Is the cramp holding off?
About 2k to go, I think. I've just had some C's overtake. I'm just trying to get back on. Just about there. But they flew past fairly quickly, so I don't know what they're up to for the last hour and a quarter. But they came through quite fast, and I'm just on my back. Could do them slowing down for a little bit, to be honest.
Yeah, possibly whether the riders that have been going for the sprints and the KOMs and just sitting up in between. We shall we'll find out then. But if they are C riders, it'll be good to try and get a draft at the moment. But Good luck with the KOM shortly. Looks like Justin's hit the bottom of it, so the power's hit up a wee bit, and he's soon going to be dropping these D riders. I can see John's now 9-10 seconds back, and Neil probably a wee bit further. How is Neil and our friendly from TFC Colin getting on, Ian?
They're getting closer and closer. Neil's just used the feather power up at the start of this climb. I think maybe to see if he could jump to the group in front. But I think William and John seem to be pushing further forward. Neil is around about 10 seconds behind, and Colin is a further 10 seconds behind Neil. But it's just starting to kind of ramp up a little bit. So it's only at 4% now, but I think it will. I think it does get a little bit steeper than that as we progress up the KOM. This was the part where there was the lower half. I think is steeper than the upper half. I think Colin's actually just gone past Neil now. Yeah, at quite a pace. So whether Neil is suffering a little bit for the longer distance, we've now been going for an hour and 40 minutes, which I know is a long time for somebody that hasn't done that distance, but to try and race that distance can be. This is the point where I felt it was going to really start kicking in, and hopefully Neil's just pacing himself up this and not putting himself into the red too much, and he can really come back and overtake Colin as he progresses up the KOM.
Although I think when you say don't go into the red too much, I think you probably want to go into the red as much as you can here. Even if you get overtaken by one or two riders on GC, if you can hit a good KOM time, you can easily catch up maybe 5 or 10 riders overall on the course. So it's maybe the sacrifice of worth losing 1 or 2 points on GC to set the best KOM time you can. But looking at Justin, he's powering up here at 3.5 watts. He appears to have dropped Paul Shuckrow by about 8 seconds and Richard Hay by about 15. So they're all splitting out on this KOM. Obviously, Neil and the rest of the Ds are even further back, 30-40 seconds. So looks like Justin's going to finish this KOM on his own. We'll just have to obviously wait till the end to see exactly how good his KOM time is compared to all the other Bs that have possibly gone over already, and quicker times or slower times, who knows? We shall find out in a bit later on, but he's putting out good numbers, still 3.5 watts up this hill, powering on, looking good, and the Ds are falling up behind. We'll cut back to them in a moment, see how they're getting on, but James, have you hit the bottom of the KOM yet?
No, but it's got to be really close now. We're at 55.5 kilometres just going through the crossroad. I think that's pretty much where it starts. So I'd say 8, 9, 10 minutes up here, then a nice little bit of coasting downhill, then straight to the finish. So not too long to go now.
Excellent, good stuff. There was 1 or 2 calls from the chat for you to give a guided tour up the KOM if you want to speak to us for the next 8 minutes, if you want to volunteer. But if not, I think we'll understand, or just let us know when the cramp starts kicking in.
Yeah, so basically at the moment I'm going uphill. I'm going to do a few turns whilst going uphill, a few more turns whilst going uphill, and then I'll go over a banner and then go downhill.
Pretty much what everyone's doing in this race, but very good. We'll cut back to you in a moment, see how you're getting on. But Justin is still powering up this hill, 4 watts a kilo now, so possibly that flat section for the last 15-20 kilometres has done him some good, putting out good numbers at the moment. He's now gapped Paul by 20 seconds and Richard by 28, nearly 30 seconds. So looking at some good power. We'll get his time when he comes around the corner in just a moment. But how's Neil and the D group and D battle getting on, Ian?
Yeah, well, the battle is happening ahead of Neil, unfortunately. William and John seem to be out front battling, and actually Colin has, as I said last time, has gone past Neil, and he's managed to catch up with William and John as well. So whether it was a tactic again, he has gone into the red, and I think has really tried to push hard to get up this, whether he felt he was needing those extra points, but he will definitely pick up points on the front 4 or the front 3 So I imagine if he can stay with John and William, which he's just actually dropped back slightly, but if he can stay with them, then I would imagine he'll take the top spot in the KOM, and then it'll be a race down the other side to see. But Neil just he's picked it up again, picked it up slightly, so he's now sat at 2.5. But John and William have been sat at around about 3, 2.8, 3, and Colin, I think, has just started to struggle a little bit as well. He's now he's just given himself a bit of a breather at 2.2. But I think we've got around about another minute or a couple of minutes until we hit the banner. 1, 2, 3, 4 more turns. But William and John seem to be racing at the front. William maybe just taking a slight lead according to Zwift Power, but I know that can change quite quickly. It now says John's in front.
We'll get back to you in a moment there. We've just seen Justin go over the top. He actually had quite a good pace rider. Had an A rider, can't catch the name there, but he had an A rider right on his front of him, a JMO, pretty much all the way up half or 2/3 of that hill, which was setting a great pace. And he actually looks like he came 13th over the top, which is a very good time because considering there's 29 other B riders further up the road, he's beaten at least half of them over that KOM. Take away a few of them that possibly aren't on Zwift Power, then I think you'll get some great points for that climb, certainly. But he's over the top now. The gap to Paul behind him's grown out to 1:20, although he is on the downhill, so that'll soon close back in. But I suspect he's actually pulled out enough of a gap to cruise pretty much to the line. I don't see Paul or Richard getting back to him. So it looks like a good job from Justin. He'll cruise down the line, and then we'll just have to see how the prime points come in. But looking good at the moment. Neil must be getting near the top now. Has he got 1 or 2 turns left? How far have we got?
Yeah, just 1 or 2 turns. John's finished. John Richardson's finished in 8 minutes. William in 8:01. And just waiting for Colin to go through as well. Not gone through. Thought you might have gone through already. And Neil's probably got I probably misjudged it last time. He's probably got about another 2 minutes left to go. It's a tough old KOM.
Yeah, he's probably a bit closer. He's past the, I don't know if it's the chalet or the castle, what the correct name for it is, but there's only, I think, probably just a couple of turns after you come around that,
Yeah.
so not too far to go. But we don't have any riders. It looks like John is the. Looks like, did you say Neil looks like he's in 4th place out of this little group then as we started?
Yep. And Colin has come in on the KOM at 8:24. So John has taken the top point on Zwift Power anyway on this KOM with 8 minutes, and William with 8:01, and Colin 8:24, and Neil is just approaching the banner now. I'm sure he'll be happy to see this go past and go underneath it, and hopefully he can enjoy the downhill.
Yeah, how are the gaps? Is there any sign of him getting back on with any of the riders, or do you think it's going to be too much of a push now?
I think it's too far. I think he's around about 30 seconds. I think 30, 40 seconds behind Colin, and over a minute behind John and William. John seems to have just eked out a little bit of a lead for himself. So we'll see how that finishes, I'm sure, in the next 5 or 10 minutes.
Especially a downhill finish, it will be hard to push on and catch anyone. Just touching briefly back on Freddie Fernandez, that was this group earlier in the ride. Definitely looks like he's possibly had a mechanical, which is a bit unfortunate. Stopped after about 37 kilometres. But back to Justin, who appears to be approaching the line. He's at 61.8 kilometres, and I make the finish line. I think it was listed down as 61.9. It might be slightly longer, probably just around 62, just over 62 kilometres, I suspect. He's got one more corner. He's got a D rider that he's currently drafting at the moment, a G Park that looks like they're going for the sprint finish, the 3.2 or 4.4 from the D rider in front of him. So he's definitely doing a bit of a push to the line. Back the way, Richard and Paul are 50 minutes or 50 seconds and 1 minute behind. So no chance anyone's catching him. He's going to come in at 1 minute. Oh, we're having a bit of a sprint to the line. 7 watts a kilo. Feather power up. 1 minute 37.43. I make it. Very good time there from Justin. I think he set a couple of good KOMs on a couple of them. So hopefully he'll be happy with his ride. We'll just have to wait and see how he got on with the points. But I suppose back to our featured rider, James. How is the KOM going?
Dan, there's 2 corners around. Nearly there. Group's a bit strung out. I did have a bit of the lead, but they've clawed it back and got one guy in front of me. He's just stretching out a bit. I've got very, very little left. 2 corners to go.
Good stuff. We'll get back to you in a minute once you're over the hill. Maybe get a chance for a bit of a rest. How is Neil getting on, Ian? Is there any sign of that gap closing down at all?
Not really, I'm afraid. He seems to, it's maintaining about the same. I've just moved up to see the finish between William and John, who seem to be tactically slowing down and speeding up and waiting for the right time. I think they have. They can only have about a kilometre left, less than a kilometre.
It's even less than that. I think it's just a few hundred metres
maybe
around the
even half a
corner.
kilometre. So that you can see them now. John's just suddenly rocketed up to 9 watts per kilogram. And Williams followed him with 7.5. I think John might take this. It's just starting to slow down. We'll see.
Williams
John's got a gap of about 2 or 3 seconds. Oh, sorry, maybe 4 or 5 meters. Yeah, I think John's going to take that. Williams second, both done fantastically.
It's like
both done really well. So I think it will be
riders
between
not
those
far
2.
behind as well.
Maybe John Richardson might take that. Sorry.
Looks like Neil is just aero tucking down to the line as well, so he won't be too far behind him, but doesn't look anyone's too close to round about him. I take it there's no sign he's getting anywhere near Colin, is it?
No, there's around about 40 seconds between. It's showing more on Zwift actually, but somewhere around about a minute ahead. So I imagine Colin will be coming up to the finish line now as well, and then soon after Neil. I'm sure he'll be happy to finish this race.
Sure, everyone will. As I suggested, it was a lot longer race than normal. An hour, approaching about 1 hour 50, which is actually quite a good time for the Ds. I thought possibly even 2 hours or 2 hours plus. So I think everyone will be happy, but it just shows you how quickly you go on a flat course like this in a group, which very good times by all of them so far. But James, have you managed to catch your breath, get a bit of a breather on the downhill?
Yeah, I've been dropped by other guys who are climbing with me though, so I've got very little to aim for now, really, to be honest. It's looking probably like a coast home. I don't think I'm going to be able to catch guys in front. I think I'm pretty safe behind. So probably a very welcome 3K coast to the finish. And the question why I do this to myself at finishing the best part of 2 o'clock in the morning.
Means you don't have to do it again for the rest of the weekend unless you really want to.
That is very true.
You could maybe have another go tomorrow, see if you can improve on your result. What did you think?
Yeah, see if I can beat my time, eh?
Are we going to see a bit of a sprint to the line for the last few hundred metres? Any plans, or just
highly doubt.
Survival mode now.
I can barely feel my right foot, and my right leg's gone to sleep. So I don't think there's too much left of me.
Seems to be getting a good reception on chat. I think for some reason people like to hear you suffering as well, like the rest of us. So good stuff. You should be home. I make it probably less than a kilometre now, or what was the total finish time? Just over 62 kilometres. So
yeah, 60.5, 60.6. So about 1.5 to go.
So yeah, we shouldn't be bad. It should be done just as well in about 1 hour 50. I would have thought, but hopefully everyone that's been watching tonight's worked out all the tactics for the rest of the weekend. But it does not look a fun course at the moment. With a couple of KOMs in there, and people going for sprints when they don't need to as well. Seems to have strung out the points as well. Made a bit of an effort, but looking good. Ian, have you worked out any plans for the weekend? Have you decided when you're racing or how you're going to attack this course?
Probably tomorrow evening. And it's clear to see that there are places where you need to find a group. If you get caught on your own, you're going to struggle because you need to find a group so that you can maintain the pace, but also recover so that you can go for the KOMs. But it is a really tough course. It's relentless with the kickers. That you don't really get too much of a steady ride in. It looks a tough one. It really does look a tough one.
So it looks a very tough, and as you suggest, if you find yourself dropped at the wrong point, it can be a lonely sort of hour ride before you find another group. We saw that with Justin. I mean, after the KOM, he had quite a while on his own. Even James here, he's found a few riders that wouldn't work with him at times and had to ride solo. Although the D group, Neil and his group, looked like they worked together pretty well. You've had a bit of an exciting finish there with William and John sprinting for the line, which James looks like he is possibly just about coming round the last corner. He's probably wishing that banner would come right in sight any second now. We do have 62 kilometres he's at, so a few hundred metres. We'll just see if he's going to have a sprint finish. I suspect we're not going to see a sprint finish from James. I'll just wait till he come round the corner and then we'll wrap it up. But looks like he's good. 27th position out of 49, so still a decent result. Still halfway up the rider list, so there's a lot of C riders still out in the course. He says don't be silly, but he is doing 8.9 watts a kilo up towards the line, which he might be about to die now. But James, how was that?
Foolish.
Good idea.
Imagine they'll be heading to the fridge as we speak.
Yep, definitely a well-earned drink or alcoholic beverage after that one, I would have thought. Very good. Have you got anything else to say, James, to wrap it up?
Just big thanks to Gordon and Ian and Damon as always, and all of our riders, even the one that finished last. Thanks very much for watching. Thank you very much everyone for watching, and we'll see you next week.
Yep, thank you all. Thanks, James. Thank you, Ian, Damon, and for everyone watching and riding. Well done. We'll see you all next week.